Hello, welcome to the walkthrough for the Medication and Health Tracker Notion template. So I'm going to start this walkthrough assuming that you've already had the template copied to your own dashboard. If you don't know how to do that, I have other videos that'll walk you through setting up Notion and how to copy templates and get them set up. So what we're going to focus on here is how to use this specific template, what it covers, how to navigate it, and kind of the process that you would go through to set it up for yourself, and then what you would do on a daily basis. So when you copy the template, it is going to have a bunch of sample data in it. For the purposes of this, I'm not going to delete anything that's in here. When you have everything set up the way that you want to, you're welcome to go back and delete all the sample data. I do recommend keeping it in when you start, just because it can kind of be good to refer to that to see how things work, or if you just want to see examples. And then once you're fully set up and ready to go, you can delete everything that's existing. So the purpose of this tracker is to do a couple things. For one, the thing that I really wanted to do that I couldn't find another solution for when I made this is I just wanted all of my information in one spot. I felt like I kept having to look things up in different places, and it was frustrating having to go back and forth, and I just wanted to have everything in one spot. So what this allows you to do is to keep track of any conditions that you are taking medication for, or that you just want to see how your symptoms go day to day. You can keep track of all of your doctors that you currently work with. I mean, doctors is a little bit specific, but really any sort of practitioner, caretaker, anything like that, you can record their information in here. And then you can keep track of any medication that you're currently taking. And this is called medication, but really is any sort of medicine or supplement or anything that you're taking in that sort of category. And then you can also keep track of things like your lab results. That was one of the things I always found frustrating, was there was no way to easily keep track of my lab results, so I didn't have to keep going back and forth to different places to look at what values were and how they changed over time. And then any other measurements that wouldn't be a lab result, like your weight or your waist circumference or things like that you're checking, your blood pressure, any of that sort of thing you can track as well. And then once you have all that set up, you'll be able to do a daily log. So you can keep track of pretty much any sort of symptom that you're interested in. There'll be defaults in here that you'll see, but you can add your own. You can customize anything here, really. So you can do your journal entries. You can, write down what you ate if you're trying to keep track of your food, either, for weight purposes or to find out if there's certain foods that cause issues for you, things like that. And then for the medication, it's also two things really. For one, just to keep track of what you're taking every day, and also as a way to look back for things that you are supposed to take every day or that you want to take every day, and keep track of how often you took them. So for me, that's supplements like my B12 and my vitamin D. I am not great at remembering to take them every day. Being able to know that I'm recording it and look back and see when I took it, for me, is helpful to remind me to take them and to motivate me to take them. Um, so it's kind of twofold to be able to do that tracking, both for any incidentals you took. So if supplements you might have taken for something short term, or if you took ibuprofen for a headache, something like that, but also to track the things that you're supposed to be taking all the time. So I'm going to show you briefly what the dashboard looks like, and then we'll go through the process, basically following what you see here in the start here, to show you how to set this up for yourself and what order to do that in. So for one, once you open your Notion, you'll see you have this sidebar. I recommend closing that. It's not the best way to navigate through this template and in general, honestly, so it's less distracting to keep it closed. Everything on this template will have links to where you need to go or links to get back to your dashboard, and that gives you a full page and more space. So you have this kind of toolbar on the left, and then the main screen has a couple different things. And again, you're welcome to rearrange these to fit your needs. The first part is focusing just on these are your medications and your supplements. And you'll always see there's different tabs in a lot of these places. It just allows you to flip back and forth between different views quickly and easily. So the default one on here is going to show you the medication that you want to track. So when you set up your medication, you can say, I want to track this to take daily, I want to track it to take weekly, whatever. So this first view is going to show the ones that you want to track. Like for me, I want to track that I'm taking my vitamin D, vitamin B12. I want to know I'm taking those every day. I put in a bunch of other placeholders in here too. So this allows you just to kind of have a quick view to go through and see which of those you took every day. So in this example, there's 3 medications that are supposed to be taken every day. I can look at this quick and see which days I didn't take any of them, which days maybe I took 1. So it just gives you a nice overview of that. And then your other tab is just going to show you any medications that you took on the given day. So this is where you could add in things you're taking short term. Maybe you were on antibiotics for something for short term. Maybe you were taking a decongestant or anything like that. This will show you the full list of everything that you took on each day to look back on. And then if you scroll down, this is going to be the view of your actual full daily log. So the default view is going to be the calendar view. And this is good to kind of show you whether you've logged every day, so you can easily look through and see, which days you did a log and which days you didn't. And then your basic, values, you can see kind of the overview for all the attributes that you've put in here. But if you want to look at it in detail, you can go to this full log tab. And what this is going to do is it's showing you a chart format of every day of your log and every field that you filled in. So by default, this is going to show you everything, right? But what you can do if you wanted to filter it is you always have in Notion this filter option. So for example, if I want to say, I want to look at every day that I had low energy and I want to see if I can find trends, right? I will say there are, if that's your main goal is finding correlations, there are applications out there that do that better. This is not the main goal, but it does give you an easy way to look at an overview, which is something I found other applications didn't do, and that was a priority for me. So if I wanted to add a filter, I can filter by any of these fields, and you'll see when we do the log, all the fields that you fill in. So for example, I can filter by energy level, and I can choose low energy. And this is going to show me any day that I logged that I had low energy. So now I can look through and say, were there locations that I was at all those days? Were there, other symptoms that I had? Like what could have been contributing to this? Are there things that I can find patterns? Or let's see, so you can remove this filter. You can add a new filter and say we wanted to search by activity level. So like see what was happening on days where I felt like I was sedentary, I didn't do anything. Could I find correlations that were happening on these days? For example, these 2 is showing nausea. Was I sedentary because I was nauseous? So you can kind of find those patterns. And then hopefully if you're actually journaling too, then you could actually open up this journal, and look through and see your journal entries, maybe see what you ate, and see what you did, see what your exercise was to find those correlations and just kind of give you a better overview of all of these things that are going on and your overall health. And then you can remove these filters and it'll reset it and show you your whole log. So those are kind of the main views of your overall tracking. And I'm showing you this on a desktop. Most of the time, if you're like me, you'll probably be entering your daily logs on your phone, and that's totally fine. This is all will work perfectly fine on your phone. But I do think that if you're looking at that sort of larger view of your log and filtering and trying to find correlations, it is helpful to do it on at least like a tablet, if not a computer. And that was another thing that I'd found on the apps that I was using. I didn't have the option to use most of them on a computer. So if I ever wanted to look at like a large volume of data, it was very frustrating because there was no way to do that on my tiny phone screen. So if you're looking at that and looking at like a calendar view or something like that, I do recommend opening it on your computer. All right, so on your left-hand side, you'll see there's 2 views for this one. And the first one is today. So that'll always pop up your daily log for today. So it's quick and easy to get to. If you're on your phone, this is the first thing that pops up at the top. So you can open that up. You can also flip it to just like a quick view of the current week, if that's helpful, just to see, kind of the past few days, and you can see, maybe see what you did differently day to day. So these charts are actually not made in Notion. So I will kind of come back to these at the end and show you where you can go if you want to make charts. Totally optional if you want to. I like the visual data for me. I find that helpful. But this down here is going to show your measurements. And I made a couple of views by default just as an example to show things that you might want to track. So for example, if you're tracking your weight, you can have a view that quickly looks at any of your weight results that you put in here, and A1C as another example. Also, as a disclaimer, most of what I put in this is samples. So if any of these actual numbers or for anything like doses are off, I promise it's just sample data. So don't, look at these and expect to see anything realistic. It's just to show you how this works. So for any measurement that you are tracking, either a lab value or something that you track under measurements, you can create a view here. And I'll show you how to do that at the end once we've put measurements in, so you can see, again, just sort of an overview. So those are two examples there. And this is, again, another chart not made inside Notion. Once you have your data in Notion, you can certainly go create these and then embed them in here, and I'll go over that at the end. And then the other thing at the bottom here is currently prescribed medications. So this is just for medications that require a prescription. And my intention with this would be so you can kind of look at things and keep track of, when you might have to get refills or, change doses, things like that. It'll group these by condition. So we'll add another example and you can see how that works. So this, again, is just to kind of show you any medication. So not necessarily things you're taking every day. You'll see we'd put in, like the vitamin D was a daily supplement. That's not showing here because it's not a prescription. So this is just to give you a quick view if you needed to check and think about when you might need to ask for refills or things you might need to check in with your doctor, things like that. And again, you can certainly add, remove, change the order of anything in here. This is just a sample layout, and that's one of the things that I love about Notion is it's really easy to customize it and make it do exactly what you need it to do. All right, so let's go over, you're opening this for the first time, you've copied your template, and you want to start setting it up with your data. So in the start here, and once you're done, you can delete this whole section if you'd like to. Kind of walks you through the order to do this. And the reason the order does matter a little bit is that you're going to be linking things together. So if you do it in this order, it makes them easier to link. That's really the only reason for doing this. So under conditions, that would be the first thing. So this is anything that you want to keep track of. So like, for example, you could put, you had a sinus infection in here, say you had this in November, you could put your diagnosis date in November. Doesn't mean you currently have it necessarily. You can put in your notes, you took antibiotics for 2 weeks and it cleared up, went away. But then you can go back and look through your log, say next year, if you have one around the same time, you could look back and, again, maybe find correlations and things like that. So for the example I'm going to do in here, I'm going to put in a type 2 diabetes medication, but the condition's already listed, so I don't need to add it. And when you put in your condition right now, you haven't entered your doctors, you haven't entered your medications yet, that's totally fine. These will show up linked once you link them from the other, from the medication and the doctors. So yeah, you can put in your date that you were diagnosed. And then you'll always have this kind of breadcrumbs at the top here. So now we've put in our new condition, you've added anything you want to keep track of. We'll go back to our dashboard. And then the next thing we're going to go to is doctors. So again, you can put all of your doctors in here, whether or not it's someone that you're currently seeing, whether or not they're currently treating you for anything. This is really just for your records. And just so that you can pull it up and, you can put in the address if that's important information to you. You can put in their contact information. There's no notes field here, but because this is Notion, and again, I'm not really going over the basics of Notion itself here, so I'm assuming that you can either have some familiarity or you can go watch my intro to Notion video, but you could add a notes field if you wanted to. So we can add notes, and we're going to make this a text field because we want to put anything in there we want to. So you could put a note saying, this was my previous doctor before I moved, but you just want to keep track of where they were. And then because we put in our conditions already, so say we had just put in this new doctor, and the condition is empty, right? So we just put her in and we want to link her to the type 2 diabetes because she's our treating doctor for that. So when you click this link, anything that you listed in your conditions page is going to pop up here. And then you can click it and it creates a link. So we'll select the type 2 diabetes, And if it's, multiple conditions, you can choose multiple. And now she's linked as your doctor that's treating the type 2 diabetes. All right, so we'll go back to our dashboard again. And then we'll go to medication. And again, it says medication. This also obviously includes supplements, vitamins, anything that you want to track if you're taking, a daily multivitamin, you know, even, topical cream, ointments, if you use, something for your eczema in the winter, really anything that you want to keep track of can go in here. And that's anything that's useful to you. So let's go ahead and add a new, we'll do metformin and say that is for our type 2 diabetes. And like I said, these are purely examples. Don't come after me if these are not accurate. I don't know if this is daily medication or not. For our purposes, we're going to say it is. I'm supposed to be taking this daily. I want to keep track of whether I actually took it every day. And then our prescribing doctor is that same doctor that did the diagnosis, so we'll link it to her. And then it is a prescription. And our start date, we'll say yesterday was our start date. There's no end date because we're presumably going to keep taking this. The end date would be useful for something. In this example, like when we change the dose, I found it useful in general to track dose changes and things, so track them as separate medications so that you could go back and look at when you took what doses. Or if it was something short term, you were on an antibiotic or something like that, then you'd obviously have an end date. And again, I'm making things up here, but say we're doing 5 milligrams is our dose. And your measurement is just what your dose is measured in. If it's something really generic, like for my probiotic, because obviously there's not a real measurement of each thing that's in there that I want to track. I just want to track whether I took the pill or not, so I can track it as a pill. If you're doing, an allergy nasal spray, you could track it as, you take 2 sprays, whatever makes sense for you to track. And then if there's instructions you want to remember, you can put that here. And then if you're taking this to help with a specific condition, you can link that also. So for this example, we'll link it to diabetes. If you were taking an antibiotic for your sinus infection, you could link that there. Obviously, some things that are pretty generic, if you add a multivitamin, might not be linked to a condition, and that's totally fine. And then another field that I found helpful for me is for some of my supplements, I would forget exactly what the brand was or where I bought it. So if it was something that I bought online, then I could add a link. So it was really easy for me to find that and to go order it. So if that's something useful, you can go ahead and add that. All right, so back to our dashboard. And I just want to show you again quick, so we're going to go back to the conditions. And you'll see that because when I put in the metformin, I linked it to the type 2 diabetes. If I come back here to type 2 diabetes, it's not going to show any medication that's linked to it. So these links are all bidirectional. If you link something, it shows on both ends. Makes it really easy to go back and forth and to track things. And then same thing, if we went back to our doctor now, because we said she prescribed the metformin, she's now linked to that medication. All right, so those are really kind of the 3 basic things that we want to put in first. The next thing is your labs. And really anytime any value that you're doing in a lab that you want to track, I would add here. So there's 2 ways you can do this. If you're coming back and you want to backfill, like for me, I went through and I backfilled a bunch of different labs that I'd had done. I came to this page and entered all my labs. If it's something that you're doing on a daily basis, like today I had my thyroid checked and I'm doing my daily log, there's a place to enter a lab value in your daily log too. So if that makes more sense, you can also do it right through your daily log. This is also certainly easier if it's something where you had labs done and they checked like 10 different values, right? So you're putting in a bunch of things at once, certainly easier to do it right on your labs page. So I think you kind of get the idea of how we're entering values here. So in this example, we're measuring the A1C. You can put in your, this is the values, what the result was of your lab, and the units is just the measurement. So however they measure it, and because sometimes if you do different labs, they might measure things differently. So it is kind of important to put the units, whatever they show it on your lab results, just so that you know you're comparing the same things to each other. And then you can list the values by default here are high, normal, and low. You can add other options if that makes sense, but just that I can now look quickly and see that these were outside the normal range. And you can put what the normal range is. This is the date you had your lab drawn. And then if there was a doctor that had assigned the labs to you, you can put your doctor in there. You don't have to do that. If it was something that you had done independently, then you can always leave that blank. If you did enter it through your daily log, that would be linked here too. These ones, since if you just enter them like in bulk, then there's no link, and that's fine. You can put tags in here if there's something that you want to be able to save as an information about this. I have these as an example because I was putting in my past lab results from, went back a couple of years and added mine in, and for some of them, they were done where I was pregnant or they were postpartum. So the values, like the normal range for that, might be different. So it might be just something that you want to keep track of. You can add any tags in here. Anything that you try to add, if it doesn't already exist, put your new value. If it doesn't exist, you just click create and it adds it for you. So tags, really personal to you, whatever makes sense. And then if you want to keep track of your lab company you had them done, you can add this to the list too. I found that helpful because I knew if I wanted to go back and look the results up, I knew which app to log into, or I knew what to search my email for, so that you can keep track of that also. All right, so that is your labs. And then we'll come to your other measurements. So this is really any measurement that you want to keep track of that's not really like a lab result. So you can put your weight in here, you could put your blood pressure in here, you can put like measurements, heart rate if you wanted to do like your daily average heart rate, really anything that you want to add here. So let's say, for example, we want to add heart rate's not on here. So we want to put our heart rate. And say our heart rate is 110. And we'll put in the date. And again, if we had entered this through the daily log, which you can, it would be linked here. If not, that will be empty. And then there's usually a spot to add notes. It's never a bad idea to add notes to something, even if you think you'll remember. So these are, any type of measurement, and then anything that you're adding here or to the lab result, you can create a graph for it. All right, so those are really the things that you want to set up beforehand. So now I'm going to show you how to do your daily log that you'll enter each day, and how to enter things through that. And again, I'm doing this on a desktop. For me, I usually do my daily log on the phone. It's, whatever makes sense is easier for you. So the quickest way to get to today will be, where the shortcut is here. It's going to filter it to today. So that's easy to get to. You could also scroll down to your calendar view, and you'll see today's log there too. Now, when you click into it, it's going to be named this by default. That's just the name of the template. How you name it is totally up to you. You are welcome to leave it as that name. It doesn't need to have a name. For me, the easiest thing is to put the date. So you could put 5/7/2023, just so I can look at it quickly and know what it was for. So we have a bunch of fields here. And again, these are just the default ones that I've set up for things that I thought people might want to keep track of. You can add values to any of this. You can remove fields. You can add fields. Really just customize it to make it what makes sense to you. So we'll start. We have overall mood. This just uses emojis, so you can pick your mood for today. Energy levels, activity level, and obviously how you define these is totally up to you. So some of the I sort of broke, some apps talk about like symptoms. I sort of broke them out so you can look at the specific category. So like for digestion, there's a bunch of examples here. If you want to remove one, you can click the little 3 lines and click delete, change the colors if that helps you. And then again, if the option isn't in here and you wanted to add it, then you can just type a new one in here and create it, and that will add it for you. So all of these are, for the most part, drop downs. and you can choose multiple values for all of them, as many as makes sense. And then if you want to remove one altogether, if you're someone who doesn't have a period at all, that doesn't make sense for you to track, you can click this option here and click delete. And then we'll come down here. So once you've filled in all of these are all of your symptoms you're tracking for the day. You have your option to add measurements. So for example, if I took my blood pressure today and I wanted to add that, I can click new. And then the title for this one is the actual value. So like say my blood pressure is 110/65. And we'll put today's date. You do always have the option to, when you're doing a date, you can include the time, especially if it's a medication and you want to track what time you're taking it, you can include the time if that's helpful to you. You'll see it's linked to the daily log because that's how we're entering it. From type, we're going to put in blood pressure and then add any notes in here if you wanted to add notes. And then go back to today. So now you'll see your measurement is showing up today because we entered it today. For your medication log, same thing, we'll click here to add new. By default, and this is just something that Notion does, every entry has to have a name. And again, so like the daily log, this one by default is going to be called medication log. You can leave it as that, that's totally fine. It is a little bit helpful, I think, when you're looking at your overview, if you name this to be what your actual medication is. So like if we were logging the metformin and we change it to say metformin, it's a little bit easier to see in the overview. I realize sometimes when you're entering a bunch of things, you don't want to take the time to change it. So you don't have to, but it is helpful if you do. And then we're going to select the medication here. So we'll select the metformin. And we're recording that I took it today. And let's say I want to include the time and I took it at 3 p.m. And then here's the important thing to fill out too. So when you put in your medication, you put in what the standard dose is that you're taking, but this is giving you an opportunity to say that you took something other than the standard dose. Maybe it's medication, you take multiple doses a day. Maybe one of the examples that I put in here was, say, like melatonin, if you take that to sleep. Sometimes maybe you take one, sometimes you take two. So you can record how many doses you took. Most of the time it'll probably be one. And then it's going to calculate this out for you. So if I had taken 2 doses, it will tell you the amount taken today is 10 milligrams. The other important thing to add in here is if you want to do those charts, and I'll go back to the charts in a minute. Like I said, the charts aren't done in Notion, but you can embed them. If you want to show, like on this chart that's showing whether you took it every day, to have the charts function correctly, you still need to put an entry in for that medication and then leave the doses at 0. If you don't do that, your charts won't work correctly. Now, you don't have to use the charts, and if you're not using the charts, then you can just, if you skip a day, that's totally fine. Don't worry about it. If you do want your charts to function correctly, if you skipped a day from logging altogether, at some point you'll have to come back and fill that in if you want your charts to work. Again, those are outside of Notion and totally optional, but that is something that you need to know if you want your charts to function. So you'll put all your medication in here. This is one we're supposed to take every day, but maybe today I also took, ibuprofen, and I'll put today. And so this is a good example, right? So for me, I put the standard dose as 400 milligrams. Well, maybe I only took half a dose today. Maybe I didn't even I just took one 200 milligram pill. So it'll calculate my amount taken. And we'll rename this to say ibuprofen. And then we'll come down here, and this is where you can just do your basic journal entries. So you can put anything you want to keep track of about today. That's completely up to you. You can list your foods here in your food diary, list your exercise, change these, add whatever makes sense for you to be able to look back and to reference. I would certainly encourage you to track anything that has to do with potential things that your medication is supposed to be helping with. If you want to track that, any side effects that your medication could have, I definitely encourage you to journal those, even if it seems obvious or not helpful at the time. Write those down but you are free to use this for whatever you'd like to. So now we have our entry for today, and you'll see it again if we go back, like to our full log look. We didn't fill in all the values, but you get the idea of how it shows up. And that's really pretty much it for how you'll be using it on a day-to-day basis. So now that we understand the measurements, just to go back to these charts, these are two different ones, and it's mostly because the places where you can do these charts only give you a certain amount for free, and I wanted to do a couple of examples. This first one is notioncharts.io, and essentially all you're going to do when you create an account here is it will have you log into Notion, it links your account, it will link all of these tables, so you can choose, this is the A1C chart, right? So in this example, we chose the labs table because that's where we're keeping track of our A1C, and it's going to link right to that table, and you can, label your axis if you want for something that makes sense, and choose the fields. Obviously, for most of these, it's just the date and the value. It's nothing complicated about what the fields are. And then when you want to embed it, you can come back here. And then in Notion, when you want to do an embed, if you click your plus sign, you'll see embed, and you can put your embed link in here. And that's it. That simple. So, and this one is similar. This one is Notion to charts. Basically the exact same thing. Will prompt you to log into your Notion account. You create your chart. And then I believe in here, you'll copy your link and then do the embed and copy it in here. And like I said, the only thing to keep in mind here is that you do have to track those zeros if you want your chart to look like this. Otherwise, it would just skip this date altogether if there's no entry for it. And that's just not as helpful. So if you are going to go through the effort of adding the charts, make sure you log those zeros. And then the other things, so we added other measurements. So say, for example, we want to track, we put in the blood pressure, right? So say we want to track blood pressure. So we're going to add a new view. And we're going to pull this from the measurements because it's not a lab value, it's a measurement. And we're going to, we can copy an existing view because it's similar, right? So we'll copy the weight view because the layout that we want is basically the same. So we'll leave it as that. And then the only thing we're going to change, well, let's rename this first. Rename this as BP. And then we're going to filter it because right now we copied the weight one, it was filtering by weight. And we want to filter our blood pressure instead. And now we'll show you the blood pressure values. Because we copied that chart, it's going to show the correct fields. It's already going to sort it by date. So copying view is always a good place to start, and then just change what your measurement is. And for lab values, it would be basically the same if we wanted to add a new lab value. Trying to think what else I had in there. I think glucose. So this one would be from labs. We're going to copy the A1C because that was a similar view to what we wanted. We want to call this glucose. And then we'll change our filter. And we don't want A1C, we wanted our fasting glucose. And there you go. Now we have these 4 different views that you can look at. And then if you also, again, if you decide you want to change where these are, you can feel free to move them around and change how it looks to be the most helpful. And then you'll also see, since we added the metformin as a prescribed medication, that's now showing up down here under our prescribed medication under type 2 diabetes because that's what it is prescribed for. So that is pretty much what you need to know to get started using this. Once you're done and we've gone through all these steps, and that's pretty much what I just did, was going through these steps. Actually, so one other thing that you might want to do, I guess, if you wanted to add to your daily log, you wanted to add things to track. In this case, we're going to go open the actual daily log. So say there's something else that you want to track, like a new group of things that you wanted to track, right? So I think I'd put, screen time or no screen time under general, but say you wanted to track a whole category called screen time. We can come under properties right here. These are all the properties in the table. So these are all the things we're tracking. So we're going to add a new property called screen time. And then we can choose the type. I think probably this makes sense to be a single select and not a multi-select where we're only going to choose one value instead of multiple. So I'll choose a select. Most of these are multi-select because you can choose multiple values for them. So we'll make it a select. And we're going to move it over here. And say our values we want to be low screen time, average, oops, high screen time. So you see it's just selecting one because we put in that you can only select one. So this was just adding it to today's log, but this is to show you how to add that new value. So now every time you do your daily log, that screen time value will pop up also. So you can do that with anything that you want to track. You can add a new text field if you want to add notes, anything that you want to add, any field, you can add that here. It's probably the easiest place to do it. And then when you do your daily log, that field will come back up for you. So if we come back to our daily log now, at the bottom, we'll see screen time. So we can set that too. So hopefully that makes sense. Hopefully that's a helpful overview of how to use this and kind of get you started with the tracker, whether or not you're new to Notion itself with this template. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me.